Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. And guys, today we're gonna read chapter 9 of Toby's story. And last video, guys, I did not say that we finished chapter 9, but we did. I forgot, guys. So guys, sorry about that. But I forgot, guys, and I was like, I have to go. I forgot, and so I'm like, this is the end of the chapter, and I forgot to say bye to you guys, and I'm like, yeet, and I clicked the button on accident. So guys, yeah, but sorry guys about that, but we're gonna read chapter 9 today of Toby's story, and guys, let's get started. Chapter 9. That night I explored the halls and slept at the foot of Dorothy's bed. The next day turned out to be one of those days when Mona did not come in the morning. Patsy found me with Dorothy and took me out on to the lawn so that I could pee. Someone came to the door while I was busy doing that. Patsy, Fran needs to ask you something, the woman called. Okay, Toby, I'll be right back, Patsy said. Be good, I wagged. It was nice to hear the word good. I was good. I yawned and stretched, working out the kinks in my back legs, and then in my front ones. I thought about the food that would be waiting in my bowl. I thought about Eddie and about bacon. Soon I'd be eating. That was much of a lovely thought. I wagged my tail. Meanwhile, I sniffed along the grass. Then I froze. Something had moved, nervous little twitch that had caught my attention. An animal crouched in the grass. Now it was sitting perfectly still, but it was too late for that. I knew it was there. Its smell drifted across the lawn to me. Not a squirrel, something different, something interesting. I had to find out. I started across the lawn toward the new animal, and instantly it turned and ran. It did not run like a squirrel, though, or like a dog racing across the ground. Instead, it leaped. A giant jump took it ahead, and that it gathered its back legs under it and leaped again. What do you think it is, guys? Is it a rabbit or a bunny? I was so surprised that I barked. Then I tore after it with my claws, digging into the soft dirt and ripping up clumps of grass. I needed to catch this animal before I ran up to a tree, like the squirrels always did. To my surprise, it did not head for the trees. Instead, it bounded straight into a bush that grew against the back fence. I followed close behind the leaves, whapped at my face, but I could still see the jumping animal dive into a hole in the fence, wiggle for a moment, and disappear. I squirmed forward and put my nose into the hole. I could not fit through it like my quarry had. Not fair! I pulled my nose back and barked in frustration, and that was a problem to solve. When Dorothy had lost the little ball, I'd solved that problem by bringing her the rope. Now I had to figure out a new puzzle. It wasn't hard. The hole was too small for me, so I would make the hole bigger. I scrabbled at the dirt under the fence with both paws. It was damp and soft, and the hole was bigger. It was in no time. I flung myself into it. It was a tight squeeze, but I wiggled and twisted and shoved with my back legs, and with one last effort, I was through. Now where had that jumping animal gone? I shook dirt off my fur and looked around. No animals. Disappointing, but I did see a sidewalk and a road and new trees, and might have squirrels in them. And coming along the road, I saw something else. A group of boys, all of them wearing shorts and t-shirts. all of them running. Excellent. The boys came closer and closer, and warm wind blew their scent to me. My head and ears lifted. They all smelled sweaty, and most of them smelled happy. But one smelled in one smell in particular was familiar. Tyler was running in the group of boys. I dashed forward to meet them. A friend. This was outstanding. I ran in circles with the boys, barking happily. They laughed and slowed down, and Tyler got down on one knee to pet me. He was breathing in big gasps. Good boy, Toby, he panted. What are you doing? What are you doing out, huh? Come on, gotta keep moving, one of the other boys said, and they began to run forward again. Hey, Tyler, you coming? Tyler got to his feet, hesitating, looking down at me. I should take you back, he told me, but I've got to finish this run. Well, you like running. You want to come? Come? I knew that word. I jumped up and wagged hard to let him know I understood. Okay, Tyler said. He began to jog forward, going a little faster to catch up with other boys. Come on, Toby, stay with me. Going a little faster to catch up with the other boys. Come on, Toby, stay with me. Running with boys. It reminded me of my days at the ranch before my feet itched. It all the time I'd run and raced with my brothers and sisters. Now I was running with people. Running outside in the sunshine, smelling dirt and grass and sweat and people and all the other animals that had crossed our path. Smelling the freshness of air, moving quickly. It was fantastic. Sometimes I ran at Tyler's side. Sometimes I dashed ahead to lead the pack. Sometimes I had to stop to sniff at particular interesting smells. Once I even found a piece of pizza crust lying on the ground. What a day! When I looked up from finishing the pizza crust, I noticed that Tyler was running more slowly than the rest of the boys. He'd fallen behind the group. I raced to his side. He looked down at me as he jogged, smiling for a second, but he didn't say much. He was breathing too hard, panting almost. Maybe he was hot and needed to cool off. Tyler, you okay? One of the boys called back. Tyler waved and nodded and sped up a little so that he was closer to them, but he slowed down again, almost at once. Come on, one of the other boys yelled. Tyler sped up again, but pretty soon he was far behind the others, and he stopped behind over to put both hands over his knees. His chest heaved, and he pulled in great gust of air. Hey, Tyler, want us to wait? One of the boys called. Tyler shook his head. We waved at them. He waved at them. They kept running. I looked at the boys running steadily along the street. I dashed after them. Time to catch up. Then I looked back at Tyler. He hadn't moved. This was odd. Why didn't Tyler want to run when running was so much fun? I circled back to him and nosed at his feet. Shouldn't he be moving? Tyler took a few steps and sat on the curb. I don't think I'm going to make it. The cross-country team, he said to me, wheezing. He had a pack on his back with a little hose that hung from it. He put his hose in his mouth and sucked on it. You want some water, Toby? He held out the cup hand and squeezed some water into it from the hose. Then he held out his hand to me, and I lapped it up. Good dog, Tyler told me. He was not panting so hard anymore. You ran a couple of miles, you know that. He poured me more water, and I drank it eagerly. My stomach was reminding that I hadn't had any breakfast yet. but it didn't matter. The other boys were so far ahead by now. Shouldn't we be running with them? I hurried back. I hurried forward 3 steps. Three. I hurried forward a few steps, paused and looked back, but Tyler didn't seem to understand that he was supposed to chase me. He sat still. I paced a few steps. I whined, frustrated. Why were we staying in one place? You want to keep going, huh? Tyler got slowly to his feet. He sighed, okay. We began to run again. Slowly, his feet seemed heavy. I stayed with him, even though I wanted to dash ahead to catch up with the pack of boys moving more quickly along the road. Somehow it felt important to be near Tyler. We hadn't gone long before we met the boys coming back in the other direction. Then I did break any. Then I did break any away from Tyler to race up to them, barking a greeting. They laughed. I headed with them to where Tyler was waiting. We all began running together, back the way we'd come. All of the boys were going slower now, but Tyler was the slowest of all. He fell to the rear of the park quickly, and he stayed there. The distance between him and the runner in the front of him stretched out longer and longer. Got back to the fence. He was not going much faster than a walk. I knew that my breakfast was waiting for me on the other side of the fence, so I barked at Tyler to let him know that I had to leave. He stopped for a moment. Letting the other boys pull even farther ahead, and bent down to pat me. Too bad you can't be on the track team for me, Toby, he wheezed. I licked his hand on and wiggled my way back under the gap in the fence. When I got back into the yard, Patsy was calling to me from the back door. There you are, Toby, she said. I couldn't see you at first. Come on in. I bet you're hungry. Breakfast was delicious. I licked the bowl until it was shiny and drank half of my water. Then I had to consider which friend I wanted to visit first. I decided on Granddad. When I reached his room, he was stretched out in bed with a book as usual. I hopped up and stuck my head between his face and the book so he would remember that my ears needed scratching. He put down the book and laughed and did his job. I was tired from my long run with Tyler, and my belly was full of breakfast, and I was happy to be with one of my friends. I curled up next to Granddad and settled down for a nap. After I'd been asleep for a while, I didn't know quite on my neck quite how long. Sound drifted into my ears. Toby, Toby! It was Mona's voice. My ears twitched awake before the rest of me. Then I woke up all the way, shook and stretched. Good morning to you two, boy, Granddad said. He had put his book down on the bedside table. You had a good snooze. He scratched my back and I wiggled happily. Then I hopped off the bed to find Mona. She was standing near the kitchen door, talking with Eddie. I could tell from the way she stood, her arms crossed tightly in front of her, her weight shifting from foot to foot, that she was worried about something. I dashed up to her and put my front paws on her knees so I could be closer to her face. Then I dropped down because Eddie had the best thing ever in his hand, bacon. I did sit at once before she could even ask. Then I put a foot up in the air, since Eddie usually told me to do shake. And then I drooled. Eddie chuckled, but only a little, and not as loudly as he usually did. Smart as a whip, he said. Here, Toby, good boy. He dropped the bacon, and I snapped it up. Nothing was better than bacon. I'm sure going to miss you, Toby, Eddie said. I wagged for my name and for the chance of more bacon. We all are. But Fran makes the rules, and if she says you go, I guess you go. Mona dropped her arms to her sides and looked determined. He doesn't have to go yet. Maybe I can still train him. Yesterday was the last day of school, and it's summer vacation now. I can come all day and work with him. You just said how smart he is. Maybe I can get Fran to change her mind. Good luck, Eddie said, and he leaned over to pet me. I licked his fingers, which smelled and tasted so perfectly of bacon. I loved Eddie. I loved Mana and Granddad and Dorothy and Patsy too. This home hadn't been exactly what I had expected when I left my mother and Walt and the ranch, but I was happy. I was here. Come on, Toby, Mona said. She sounded determined. We did a lot of training that day. The next morning, it was Mona who was there to let me out first thing. I gave her some licks to show how much I loved her, and then I hurried off to check the lawn for more of those bouncy animals. I could smell that a few of them had been around earlier, that but none seemed to be here now. Patsy came out to join Mana, and while they were talking, I headed for the fence. There might be a bouncy animal on the other side of it. I forced myself under the bush and wiggled through the hole to check. No animals except a squirrel who chattered angrily at me from the tree high up overhead. I ignored him. I was starting to learn about squirrels. There is no point chasing them once they're high up, but if they were on the ground, well, they'd better watch out. I guess the bouncy creature had learned his lesson. She would be hanging around and she wouldn't be hanging around anymore, but down the street. I spotted something that made my head and ears go up, and my tail started moving. The boys, the running boys, they were coming back, and Tyler was with them, and them barking with happiness. They laughed, but didn't stop running. Guess you're not the only newbie, one of the boys said to Tyler as they jogged. Tyler nodded, but didn't have the breath to answer. This was excellent. New friends. More running. I settled in by Tyler's side. Slowly, he began to fall back from the group, just like the other day before. I ran a little ahead of him. Then I looked back. Maybe he'd figure out how to play chase me now. He had. He sped up just a little, so he was running not far behind my tail. We ran like that with the boys ahead of us, and the wind in my nose bringing us the good smells from all around. I looked back again to see if Tyler needed another reminder. Apparently, he did because he'd stopped. He'd stood bent over with his hands braced on his knees. I hesitated. Should I go back to him? But the other boys were still running. One of them turned to look at both of us. That boy was telling me to chase him. I leaped upward and barked up for Tyler, so he would know that to do. I heard him groan a little. Okay, Toby, he gasped. He started running again. He turned around not long after that. I headed back again. I ran in a circle around the boys to say goodbye, and then wiggled around the hole in the fence and crawled out from under the bush, ready for breakfast. Mona was standing in the yard looking worried again. I raced up to her, panting and wagging. Why was she worried when we were together? And when there was bacon in the world. Toby, she said, where were you? I looked all over the yard and didn't find you. I even checked inside. She bent down to pet me. I was glad that she was glad to see me. Were you hiding somewhere? Were you, Toby? She put her worried face close to mine. I licked her nose. Breakfast now? She shook her head and sighed. Weird. She muttered, and she took me indoors to feed me. Breakfast really is wonderful. Chapter, guys, 10. So, guys, we are going to end this video right here, and I'm not going to forget to say to end this video like last time. And, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. And, guys, we are on chapter 10 now. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this chapter. And guys, we only have to... And guys, this book only has 16 chapters, so 6 chapters to go. Woohoo! And bye, guys!